welcome to another art journal tutorial. I'm going to go ahead and get started the way I start all of my art journals by using some tissue paper by Tim Holtz, and I'm just going to glue that down onto my layout. And as I do with all of my layouts, I have got some Scotch tape along the seam between my two pages just to give it some added support. And then I'm just going to lay down a layer of glue to begin sticking down my tissue paper. And I'm just going to smooth out any creases out of the tissue paper with my bone folder. I'm going to put a nice crease right there in the middle. I absolutely love this tissue paper by Tim Holtz. I think it makes for a really interesting background. And just make sure you get glue all the way to the edges. I've gone ahead and applied glue all the way to the edge of the other page, and I'm just hitting it with my heat gun to make sure that it's nice and dry. And I'm just going to trim up the edges as I do in all of my layouts, just to get that tissue paper flush with the edge of the page. You could, of course, use any tissue paper that you have, but I just prefer the Tim Holtz tissue paper. And now I'm going to be applying some gesso over the top, and I'm actually going to apply 2 layers of gesso because I really want to push the background farther into the tissue paper farther into the background. And once I have that first layer dry, I've just gone back and added a second layer. And then I'm going to be using some Distress ink, and this is the color Pickled Raspberry. And I'm just going to apply that all over the page. And now I'm going to add some Wild Honey. I absolutely love the color that this gave me. It's almost like a burnt orange color with some areas of the pink and the yellow coming through. And now I'm going to use some of my Distress ink, and this is Vintage Photo along the edges. And I've got here a stencil by Tim Holtz. It's called Splatters, and I'm just going to add those around the page. And my theme today is coffee, so I've taken some scrapbooking paper, and on the back I've just printed some coffee takeout mugs. So these are like the coffee mugs that you would get at your favorite coffee shop or at the gas station. I've just cut those out. And you could use any kind of coffee mug, whatever you like to drink your coffee out of. I like the kind that have the lid, so that's the kind that I've made, but you could certainly do a teacup or a coffee cup, whatever you prefer. And I'm just putting these down on the paper, getting them lined up where I'd like them. And then I'm going to stick them down with some matte medium by Liquitex. And then I'm just going to apply that on the back to stick it down, and then I'm going to paint a layer all over the top just to make it a non-porous surface so that I can go in with my big brush markers and add some shading and some blending around those mugs. Just make sure that you get a nice even coat. If you do plan on adding shading or some coloring to anything that you stick down, you really want it to be a non-porous surface, or otherwise the ink will stick to the fibers of the paper and you won't be able to move it around. But by doing this, you're giving yourself just a few seconds to move that ink around and blend it in. And then once you get them stuck down, you want to make sure that they're nice and dry before you go in with your marker. So I'm just going to hit it with my heat gun to make sure that I have that area nice and dry. And now I'm just going to go in with a red big brush marker and add just a little bit of shading. It's a little bit subtle, but it makes it a little more interesting, I think. And if you get it outside the lines like I did, just make sure you have a baby wipe nearby. Like I said, you do have a few seconds to clean up any messes. And if the color is coming out too bright, you can certainly go back over it like I'm doing with a baby wipe to lighten the color just a bit. I didn't have a perfect matching green, but it was close enough. And now I have a brown color. I really like this because it almost makes it look a little bit distressed, and it was perfect to use with the lids because I wanted them to be slightly different colors so that they would set off from the rest of the cup. So I'm just going over those with that brown color and blending that in just to make them look a little bit darker. And now I'm going to go around the outside of the cups and I'm going to blend some brown in just to make it to give it a little bit more interest, to make it look a little bit distressed. And I was being extremely picky with my shading, so you can see I'm hitting it with that baby wipe quite a bit. I could spend a lot of time doing this, and I did on this layout because I was being really picky with how my shading looked. But you can certainly go at your own pace and do it however much or however little you would like. I think that this step is really important to getting a really unique layout. Now I'm just going to go around to give my cup some definition. I'm using just a black ink pen. This is a permanent ink. You could always go around it with a brown if you preferred, but I like the way that this set it off slightly from the rest of the page. And then I wanted to add some details to my lids. And then I'm going to go in and add just a little bit more of the color. So I'm just adding some more interest and some more shading to the cups. And once I'm happy with that, I'm just going to go back again with my brown and add a little bit more shading. And if you outline the cups in a distressed brown color, you may not need to do a whole lot of shading. I wanted to use my black pen, but that's certainly up to you. And then once you're happy with that, I'm just going in and touching up some of those areas. I'm going to use some StazOn ink, and this is a brown color to stay with the coffee theme. And my quote for this layout is, "Coffee makes everything better." I'm going with my white gel pen and I'm just adding some highlights to my lettering. And this lettering is by Tim Holtz, and it is slightly distressed, and usually I would go back in and fill it in, but I liked the way the distressed looked on the font. It matched my layout. And now I'm just adding some highlights onto my cups. And for my final step, I'm going in with some Liquitex modeling paste. And I have a stencil. To be honest, I don't know where I got this stencil. I don't know who it's by, but it has some really neat swirls, and I thought that almost looked like steam, so I thought that would go along with the layout really well. And I'm just going to go in and add in those swirls. I'm just going to touch up any areas that I'm not happy with. And you can do as much or as little of this as you like, but it adds a really nice texture to the layout. And I've found that the more detailed a stencil is, it's a little bit harder to work with the modeling paste. So you can see I was having to clean up quite a bit. And now I didn't think that my border that I originally put on was bold enough. So I'm going back through again with my vintage photo. And here's the layout. I'm really excited with how this one turned out. It's a little bit different than what I usually do, but I thought this one was a lot of fun. If you guys enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. There are more art journaling tutorials to come. Thanks, guys.